The millionaire froze at the cafe door when he heard a small, trembling voice say the word, "Mom," and for a second his heart stopped because the woman the boy was holding was the same woman who once walked away from him without looking back, the same woman who left him standing alone in an empty apartment with nothing but silence and pride to keep him warm. He did not move, he did not speak, he simply stood there with his coat still on his shoulders, watching from a distance as the boy clung to her arm and smiled like he had found the whole world in her embrace. No one in the cafe noticed him, and that was strange because people always noticed him. He was rich, powerful, respected, sometimes feared, but in that moment he felt invisible and small. Years ago he was not a millionaire, he was just a quiet man with big dreams and rough hands, working long hours while she believed in him, and he loved her in the simplest way, with loyalty and patience, but success changed everything around him even though it did not change his heart. When the money came, the friends came, the invitations came, and the powerful people began to circle him like he was a prize, and among them was Victor Hale, a man with influence in every corner of the city, a man who could make careers rise or disappear with a single phone call. Victor was charming in public and ruthless in private, he spoke smoothly and smiled often, but his eyes were always measuring, always calculating. Victor took an interest in the woman he loved, not because he cared for her, but because he wanted to prove that he could take anything he desired, even the heart of another man. The millionaire remembered the night everything fell apart, the rumors, the whispers, the photos sent from unknown numbers, the business contracts suddenly collapsing, the newspapers questioning his integrity without evidence, and Victor standing beside him at events pretending to be a loyal partner while slowly tearing apart his reputation. She believed the lies, or maybe she was simply tired of the chaos, and one day she left with a short note that said she needed peace, she needed stability, she needed something he could not give her anymore. He never begged, he never shouted, he just stood there in that same quiet way, absorbing the pain like a storm passing through his chest. It took years to rebuild what Victor tried to destroy, years of sleepless nights, years of quiet strategy, years of being underestimated while people thought he was finished. He learned to be patient, he learned to watch instead of react, he learned that true strength does not scream, it waits. And now here he was, standing in a cafe he rarely visited, staring at the woman he once planned to marry, and a small boy calling her mom. Sadness settled over him first, heavy and familiar, like an old coat he never truly threw away. He wondered if she had a child with Victor, if this was Victor's final victory, a family built on the ruins of his own dreams. He felt helpless for a brief moment, like the young man he used to be, powerless against influence and manipulation. The boy laughed softly and showed her a drawing, and she kissed his forehead with a tenderness that pierced his chest. He turned slightly away, telling himself he did not belong in that scene anymore. But then something felt different. The boy looked up again and said, "Mom, will he ever come back for us?" And she gently brushed his hair and whispered, "He will, he promised." The millionaire's breath caught, because Victor never promised anything, Victor only took and discarded. He moved closer, still unnoticed, and listened. The boy asked if his real father would recognize him, and the woman's eyes filled with tears as she said, "He would know you anywhere." The millionaire felt the world tilt beneath his feet. Real father. The words echoed in his mind. He did the math, he counted the years, and a quiet realization began to bloom in his chest like a fragile light. When she left, she had already been distant, already secretive, and he had been too distracted by business wars to notice the deeper truth. Victor had told him she was leaving for a better life, for a stronger man, but what if she had left to protect something, or someone? The sadness shifted into confusion, then into a cautious, trembling hope. He sat down at a table nearby and removed his coat slowly, giving himself time to breathe. He did not want to storm over and demand answers, that was not who he had become. He had learned patience the hard way. He ordered coffee and watched them from the corner of his eye, noticing details he had missed at first, the boy's posture, the shape of his hands, the way he frowned slightly when concentrating on his drawing. It was like looking into a mirror of his childhood photos. His chest tightened again, but this time it was not only pain, it was possibility. He remembered how Victor had pressured him to sign documents quickly back then, how legal papers were pushed in front of him during the chaos of the breakup, how he had trusted people he should have questioned. A quiet hope grew stronger, steady and controlled. He was no longer the naive man who reacted with emotion alone. He had resources now, loyal lawyers, investigators who owed him favors, people who believed in his integrity because they had seen him rise again from nothing. He finished his coffee calmly and stood up, walking toward their table with measured steps. She looked up and their eyes met, and in that instant years of misunderstanding and silence passed between them. She looked shocked, then afraid, not of him, but of what his presence might mean. The boy stared at him curiously, tilting his head. The millionaire did not raise his voice, he did not accuse, he simply said her name softly, and asked if they could talk. She nodded slowly, her hands trembling. They moved to a quieter corner while the boy remained at the table with his crayons. She told him everything in a low voice, how Victor had threatened to destroy him completely if she stayed, how fabricated charges and financial traps were prepared, how she was told that leaving quietly would save him from prison and public disgrace. She had discovered she was pregnant shortly after leaving, and Victor had forced her into silence, claiming the child was his in order to maintain control. The millionaire listened without interruption, sadness washing over him again, this time mixed with regret for not seeing the manipulation sooner. She said she tried to contact him many times but was blocked at every attempt, messages intercepted, letters returned, numbers changed without her knowledge. Victor had built walls around both of them. The helplessness he once felt returned briefly, but it did not consume him. Instead, it hardened into resolve. He asked one simple question, "Is he my son?" She looked at him with tears falling freely now and said, "Yes, he is." The world went silent in his ears, and then something steady rose inside him, not anger, not revenge, but clarity. He had spent years rebuilding his empire quietly, strengthening alliances, exposing corruption in small, strategic moves. Victor believed he was untouchable, still powerful, still protected by connections, but times had changed. The millionaire had gathered evidence of Victor's fraudulent deals, offshore accounts, bribery schemes, not out of vengeance, but because he knew men like Victor always overplayed their hands. He had been patient. He returned to the table and knelt slightly to look at the boy at eye level. He did not claim anything yet, he did not overwhelm him, he simply introduced himself and asked about the drawing. The boy smiled shyly and explained it was a picture of his dad coming back, a tall man with strong shoulders. The millionaire felt tears threaten his composure, but he held steady, emotionally strong as he had trained himself to be. Over the next weeks he moved carefully, initiating legal action for paternity in complete confidentiality, activating investigations that had been quietly prepared for years. Victor laughed at first, calling him desperate, accusing him of trying to rewrite history, using his influence to delay court dates and intimidate witnesses. But the millionaire did not react publicly. He remained calm, composed, speaking only through official channels. Evidence began to surface, financial crimes documented, testimonies from former associates who had grown tired of Victor's arrogance. Media outlets that once doubted the millionaire now listened closely. The DNA results came back undeniable. The boy was his son. The court battles intensified, and Victor's untouchable image started to crack. Investors withdrew, partners distanced themselves, politicians avoided his calls. The powerful man who once controlled narratives found himself exposed under bright lights. The millionaire never gloated, never gave interviews filled with anger. He simply stood firm, focused on securing custody rights and ensuring his son's future would be stable and safe. The day the verdict was announced, confirming paternity and granting him shared custody while launching criminal investigations into Victor's dealings, he felt not triumph but quiet justice. Victor's empire began to collapse under the weight of its own corruption, and the man who once humiliated him now faced public disgrace. In the same cafe where it all resurfaced, the millionaire sat again, this time beside his son, helping him stir hot chocolate while the woman he once loved watched with cautious relief. The sadness had softened into something wiser. The helplessness had transformed into patience. The quiet hope had carried him through years of darkness. And the justice that arrived was not loud or explosive, it was steady and undeniable. He realized that real strength was never about crushing an enemy, it was about enduring long enough to see truth rise on its own. As his son looked up and called him dad for the first time, the word filled the space between them with healing, and the millionaire understood that sometimes life breaks you quietly so it can rebuild you stronger, and sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply standing still while those who wronged you fall by their own weight.